Hey, it's Steve, and I'm back with another review I hope you'll appreciate. So today I want to review a new prebiotic formula called TherBiotic SynBiotic from Klaire Labs. Man, that's a lot of biotic right there. Klaire Labs currently makes TherBiotic Complete, which happens to be 2-to-1 the best-selling probiotic in the professional space. That means it's far and away the most prescribed probiotic in America. So when it comes to Klaire Labs and probiotics, we've come to expect the best. Hypoallergenic, broad-spectrum probiotics that deliver live probiotics where you need them, probiotics that work. And now Klaire is leading the way with the next generation. But first I want to take a relatively deep dive into the gut with you. Is that cool? Okay, let's go. Let's get to it. So over the course of the 20th century, we've made incredible investments in public health, such as antibiotics, vaccinations, as well as with the advent of new technologies. In that process, we've seen a huge decrease in diseases that are caused by single pathogens, such as tuberculosis, measles, mumps, rubella. According to the New England Journal of Medicine, in an article that appeared about 15 years ago, they also marked that there was a huge rise in chronic disease, things such as asthma, type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, and the like. There was no mention of how these diseases interacted with the microbiome or how the microbiome interacted with these diseases. But because of that, epidemiological data and the advent of DNA sequencing and our ability to sequence the microbiome, what we've been able to prove is that every single one of these diseases, as well as a slew of others, have been directly linked to the microbiome and the changes in the microbiome. We've come so far in 15 years. So when you think about what affects your microbiome, think about certain things such as diet, age, different types of things that you're taking into your body, including antibiotics. We know that all those things are going to influence your microbiome. But maybe what you didn't think about is that it's also affected things like sleep. For example, if you get less than your standard 8 hours of sleep, I'm sure you're all getting that. It actually can influence the microbiome so significantly that you can have a drop of trillions of bacteria within your microbiome in one night's lack of sleep. And then we also probably don't think about what time of year it is. And indeed, just like how the fluids we change should shift in the seasons, we're also coming into winter. We're going into root vegetables, more warming soups, those types of things. Our microbiome also shifts because of the environment, including the weather outside, including the time of year, including the amount of sunshine that we get in. So I think that's really interesting. And then also supplementation. You know, a long time ago, bacteria were seen as the bad germs and the bad bugs. We've got to disinfect everything. But because now we know so much about how we are teeming with these vast populations of probiotics, not only within our body, but on our skin and everywhere, people really started to seek out these sources of beneficial foods. It goes back to the fermentation of wine or kefir, another example, arnado. There's kombucha, kimchi. There's this huge tradition of people fermenting foods and not necessarily like, hey, I'm going to go take my probiotic drink today. But they knew that that influenced their health. And then came probiotics, right? The industry is evolving, and here we are at probiotics. All of you guys know what probiotics are, right? If not, just leave now. Kidding. No, but seriously, probiotics are healthy gut bugs. These are the guys that we're going to take into our bodies that can be in the form of foods, but we're going to speak more specifically about supplementation. And these bugs are going to help influence our microbiome. Now, I think there are a lot of questions like, okay, we got trillions of bacteria in our GI tract, and you're telling me to take this little capsule has enough. Basically, a drop in the bucket, right? It's 200 billion or it's 50 billion. How is it actually going to make a difference in the microbiome? And so I'm glad you asked, because the microbiome is a dynamic system. Everything that comes in is going to have a response to it. And if we continually feed the microbiome with healthy, good bacteria, we're encouraging those populations to grow and flourish. And so it's not a day-to-day thing. It's not like, oh, I'm going to take an antibiotic and bam, you kill them. That even takes 7 to 10 days to kill those pathogenic bugs. And so this is a process of supplementing and keeping enough on board and reminding your microbiome, hey, these guys are around. And then also getting them food so they can flourish. But if we think about this product, I wanted to bring up the specific bugs that are in TherBiotic SynBiotic. And I want to take a little bit more visual because I could put down a bunch of papers for you guys, but really what we want to see is how is this actually going to influence the system? And so Klaire chose probiotics that were specific to immune function. We house about 70% of our immune system within our GI tract. And so Klaire chose bugs that are going to be able to positively influence that immune function and help modulate that. So that's not this very robust freak out histamine reaction. It's going to be more tempered. It's going to be more controlled. It's going to boost things that are going to help give intelligence to your immune system. So coming back to main function again, SynBiotic, TherBiotic SynBiotic has 7 strains in this formula, and a huge part of what Klaire wanted to focus on again was that immune system function. Another thing Klaire really looked at is antibiotic support. We know that there are probiotics out there very specific to supporting the dysbiosis that can happen right after antibiotics. Saccharomyces boulardii is another one. There are two more off the top of my head. Klaire makes a formula called ABX and also one called Biospora. All right, so also Lactobacillus plantarum. Lactobacillus plantarum is another really, really good probiotic to help support through antibiotic therapy, and then of course digestive function. Now we know that probiotics help us digest our food. Specifically, there's probiotics that are out there that can help us digest certain lactose molecules or casein molecules or gluten molecules. And so Klaire selected strains are going to be able to help not only support these digestive functions, but also help support, move things through and help break them down so that we can assimilate them better. Klaire also chose one specific for respiratory function. And respiratory function is a strong and close connection with immune function. It's one of our first mucous membranes that gets interacted with the outside world. And so regardless of if we have quote-unquote respiratory troubles, it's one of our main interfaces because it's also one of our drainage pathways. The lungs release all of our excess gas waste. And so Klaire found probiotics, so interesting, right? Klaire found probiotics that are in our gut that can actually influence our lungs. But it makes sense because our gut is a mucous membrane, our lungs are a mucous membrane, so they're very much interact with each other. So a really great symbiotic relationship. That one's with an M, not an N. And then also the inflammation modulation. We know that Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG is a very well-studied probiotic. Has a lot of research behind it. But one of the most amazing things that it does is that it directly targets different inflammatory enzymes and proteins and pathways within the GI tract to bring that inflammation down. Again, remembering that our GI tract houses 70% of our immune system. Our immune system basically is an inflammation carrier, right? It cruises around, sees something that's not self, and then it falls apart, creates all this inflammation. And that inflammatory process is what actually calls in the different cells, brings in the different stuff, that brings in the cleanup crew, brings in the army, so that there can be some shift in what that foreign substance is. So that is a massive response, one of the first immune system cells that sees a foreign particle. And then also digestive comfort. And so this is associated with gas, bloating, also with just that feeling of like, oh, just really sitting in my belly, right? Those types of things. So this is a really great probiotic that has a broad range of benefits to it. What I'm going to point out is that TherBiotic SynBiotic, this little guy right here, also has Lactobacillus acidophilus DDS1. And then Klaire also has Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG. Both of those are some of the two most well-studied probiotics available today. So there's quite a bit of value in there as well. There's a technical data sheet that I can share with you, as well as I have a couple other educational materials that really point out those different strains. But for the purposes of this presentation, let's talk a little bit more big picture. So let's talk about who would be this person that would be looking to supplement with this formula. One of the things I really like to look at is the active lifestyle. So this is a shelf-stable probiotic. All the strains in there do have solid research on them. It's 1 serving per day. Obviously, that can be titrated based on what the practitioner offers, but it's a boost of health from within. So it's for a very conscious consumer that knows that hair, skin, and nails health come from the GI tract. The GI health is reflected in every part of our bodies. This is going to be a very convenient capsule to give to an active lifestyle. Another thing to think about is the immune system boost. So we're coming into cold and flu season, and SynBiotic has a huge ability to not just help with inflammation modulation within the body, but also boost that immune system function and take care of the respiratory tract. So really important benefits there. The holidays are coming, which means that we'll be eating things we don't traditionally eat. So that can absolutely influence our microbiome. SynBiotic can help support during that time as well. Stress, again, the holidays are a very stressful time for some people, even if it's just how busy we get during those times of year. I don't know about you guys, I think we're all hustling, and so we maintain a higher level of what somebody else would be like, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. So very, very valuable for those individuals, and then also poor sleep. Remember what I said earlier, that you can have about a 1.3 trillion decrease in probiotics, the healthy bugs in your gut after just one bad night of sleep, which is nuts, right? Crazy. So really important to help support that. Part of your respiratory, we can think about athletic performance. This is very important, not only when you're sick, but also to maintain that active lifestyle. Again, the allergy, cold and flu season, very valuable in that regard. Any respiratory issue. So this can be your asthma patient, this can be your child, maybe that's still growing or developing in some parts of the country during what they call fire season, unfortunately. There's another really important part when there's all that smoke in the air. There's a big connection there. And then also, I really like to acknowledge, because this does have such a huge influence on the respiratory system, in traditional Chinese medicine, the lungs are associated with the emotion of grief, when it's out of balance. So we hold a lot of sadness in our lungs. And so we know that probiotics affect our mood. They produce all these different enzymes that stimulate the production of serotonin and dopamine, the happy hormones. And so this probiotic is specific to respiratory tract. It can also address those with sadness or grief or the feeling of loss. So thinking outside the traditional probiotic supplementation, it's very valuable to think about it in that systems-oriented way too. So really important after a loss, really important after any sort of prolonged grief, can be really valuable for gut control and rest, and then microbial nourishment. That word, it's my favorite one, nourishment. But this is a convenient symbiotic support. It's studied strains that are in there, and TherBiotic SynBiotic supports healthy barrier function as well as healthy flora too. All right, so prebiotics. This is prebiotics and probiotics. Okay, so prebiotics. This is basically nourishment for the GI tract. But first, I want to talk about detox. Let's detour off the slide deck, if that's okay. All right. So our body has five main pathways of detoxification in our systems. Right. Our kidneys are going to be for water waste. GI is going to be for fat-soluble waste. The lungs for any vapor waste or gaseous waste. The next one is our skin through the act of sweating. And then what do you think is the fifth one? Ready? Emotions. Emotions is a huge way we detox. So you ever felt like sometimes you just gotta blah, blah, and then you feel better, or just go out there and like go to work out or hit a heavy bag or go do kickboxing or something, and then you feel so good. That's an emotional detox. It's that pent up rage, that pent up frustration, that pent up sadness. So if we're thinking about the systems and how that influences us, and we think about our detox system, this is with the GI. So anything that's fat soluble, going to go through these detoxification processes. Anything that has gaseous waste, right, that's going to go through the lungs to that detoxification process. Immune function is hugely regulated not only through our kidney tract, but also we're getting out different waste things. So the kidneys and the GI tract are going to be this immune system function area. The skin, obviously, anything that happens in the GI tract is reflection on the skin, so very important there. And then emotions, we can come back to this one too. So you can basically say that this probiotic, TherBiotic SynBiotic, hits every single detoxification step within the body. So it's just a great adjunct, right? This means we have so much application for this symbiotic formula. Okay, prebiotics. I love prebiotics so much. Does that sound weird? All right, the official definition of prebiotics is anything that we take in that the microorganisms within our bodies can utilize as fuel and convey benefits. Definition rewrite. This is food for our microbiome. So not only the healthy gut bugs, but also we need to remember that we have viruses, we have parasites, we have little amoebas on board. They all participate in prebiotic function. Isn't that interesting? Just take a moment. That we are now being able to sequence the human microbiome through bacteria. But nobody's ever talked about the viral microbiome, ever. And it's so much bigger. So think about that. I'll be excited to see what the research has to offer. So someone says to you, okay, we have trillions of these cells in our GI tract, but only a very small percentage is coming in these probiotics. What the research is showing is that prebiotics are the ones that actually can significantly influence the microbiome and shift those. But it makes sense if we think about it, because if we eat a lot of processed foods and we have a lot of sugar on board, then we're going to feed bacteria that eat these things, right? They're like, nom, 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 that's delicious. I can process that. If we eat more complex carbohydrates, we eat more different types of fiber, we have a harder process of breaking those down inside of our bodies. And then we rely on those gut bugs to help break those down. So we're feeding the gut bugs. We can break down those hard to digest foods. Processed foods are very easy to digest because what are they? They're sugar and fat, and our bodies are really, really good at breaking down those in our small intestines. So most of that nourishment doesn't even make it to the GI tract, which is why we get bugs cruising on up into the small intestine where all that nourishment is. What does that look like? SIBO. Right, totally, that's right. So we've got to push the gut bugs back down and feed our bodies things that are going to feed those bacteria as well. So we're going to break down different types of foods in our body. And I think now is an important time to talk about the difference between soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber means it can dissolve in water. Insoluble fiber means it can't. So let's think about this from as we work down through the system. Soluble fiber is going to immediately be dissolved pretty much within our stomach. We have a lot of water in our stomach and then also in the small intestine. So it's basically going to be like, hey, you can't see me, right? And cruise right on through. The insoluble fiber, think of them as big hunk of, I've got young boys, I'm going to say dump trucks, right? And it comes on down digestive tract, and digestive tract is like, whoa, that's a big old dump truck. We better break that thing down to something smaller. You with me? All right. So in the small intestine, our body's able to break down those insoluble fibers right into smaller, different molecules, and you're going to add bulk to the stool. These come in things like nuts and seeds and whole grains, those types of things. But it's basically like, hey, look at me, I'm coming down. And the soluble fiber is like, shh, hey, I'm going to just sneak on by. And the soluble fiber makes it all the way down to the colon, right? Because it basically has its camouflage on. And then in the colon, basically, the curtain gets ripped away, and these bacteria are like, oh my God, there you are. And then they munch those things down. And as they munch them down, then they're going to do all these beautiful metabolic processes. So just as we go through metabolic processes to make us breathe and giggle and blink our eyes and notice that we're hungry, they do the same things too. So they're going to provide a lot of different functions within the body through the metabolic processes. They're going to secrete enzymes. They're going to secrete proteins. They're going to secrete a little activation molecule. It's going to turn on signaling, for example. So one of the things it's going to stimulate is peristalsis. Peristalsis is that healthy squeezing the GI tract. It's basically the pump. Keeps things moving through. And what does that look like when it stops? Constipation, SIBO, right? Both of those things. So we're going to keep the things moving on through. The next thing is going to reduce gas formation because, again, there's two types of flatulence. You guys remember this, right? Is anybody saying no? We don't know the two types of flatulence? Okay, so if our body's not digesting something, basically it does one of two things. Either it starts to ferment, which is carbohydrates. We can think about beer and yeast and bread. It starts to ferment, so it creates a lot of gas. So that's when we get out really large farts, right? The really loud ones. The other type is if our bodies aren't digesting proteins. Proteins are going to putrefy. So we all know the smell of rotten meat, like, the weird examples in your refrigerator when you're a kid, right? So those are the silent but deadly farts. Okay, so both of these are forms of excess waste. But basically the gas part of it is the body not being able to digest these soluble fibers. So if we get the bugs on board that can digest those soluble fibers, then the gas goes down because it's not going through the fermentation process by itself. The bug's going to go through that fermentation process, and what's really great about that is in eating those things that cause this gas, they produce things like short-chain fatty acids, which heal our intestinal lining, that go to our brain and stimulate happy hormones that we can make it through the day, that help us digest, help us with our digestive function. So super important. So prebiotics obviously are going to stimulate the growth and production of healthy flora, which makes a lot of sense, right? We're not putting in that processed food. We are putting in the soluble fiber food that those gut bugs can grow and multiply and replicate and do all these lovely things for us. So hugely important. This is going to support immune function, not only by suppressing pathogenic bacteria like the ones that are really hungry for those heavily processed carbohydrate-rich foods, but they're also going to do it by enhancing the barrier function within the GI tract. Again, through these metabolic processes of secreting things like short-chain fatty acids. Prebiotics are also going to help calm the inflammation within the GI tract because digestion is innately an inflammatory process. But we need to have that inflammation modulation. Too much and we're caught on fire, too little and we're real wet and tired and damp and sad. And so we really need that happy balance, that happy medium. And prebiotics are also going to help us maintain the optimal pH within the GI tract. And again, it's a very different pH in the mouth versus the stomach versus the small intestine versus the large intestine and the outshoot as well. So prebiotics help regulate the whole process because it's going to be different. So why are we so excited about Klaire's specific prebiotic? Because not all prebiotics are really great if we don't have the gut bugs on board to be able to digest those prebiotic fibers. The number one complaint the doctors will tell me, the patients will come in and be like, oh my God, I took that prebiotic and I got so gassy, so upset, so bloated. Maybe I threw up a little bit, like I didn't feel good. It's because they don't have the bugs on board to be able to digest those things. A lot of those are going to be carbohydrates. They're too complex. Another one. Oh, you told me to eat broccoli, and then I had broccoli, and I was dead. Like, God, I'm so gassy, so bloaty. People call them broccoli farts, right? It just means they don't have the bugs on board to be able to eat those things. So if they can't eat them, they're going to either putrefy or they're going to ferment. So this prebiotic specifically, it's called Sunfiber. It's FODMAPs compliant prebiotic. It's considered a galactomannan soluble fiber, which comes from partially hydrolyzed gar gum. So what's really great about this is that you can take it in larger quantities. It completely dissolves in water, so it's really, really compliance heavy. But the reason why it's super special, again, is not only that it's going to support the regularity of moving things through, helping with that peristaltic function, it's going to feed the good bacteria, and it's suitable for even the most sensitive individual. Really coming back to that original Klaire Farm mission of saying, Klaire Labs is going to make the cleanest nutrients everybody can take. So Klaire does have some really great prebiotics. However, for example, in the TherBiotic line, a lot of people have a hard time with inulin. And so Synbiotic, you can be like, oh, don't worry about it. This is a great place to start. So Sunfiber is a really, really great prebiotic, and it's a great place to start if somebody is new to prebiotic supplementation. So this could be something you could have on board for a while and then start to titrate them into something, more vegetables than probably Klaire's Biotogen formula, another one of the prebiotics in the Klaire Labs lineup. So this is a good starting place. It's also non-GMO, it's gluten-free, it's kosher, halal, vegan, all those lovely things. So what does Klaire do? Klaire takes this powerful combo of prebiotics and probiotics and creates the synbiotic. I'd like to point out, just for clarity, this is with an N, not an M. Symbiosis is two organisms living together. Synbiosis is when one supports the other. That's right, synergy. Really important distinction there. So what we have is Klaire Labs TherBiotic SynBiotic. Carefully selected and sourced strains provide a stable probiotic formula backed by science. Delayed release capsules provide further protection to ensure survivability of the strains. State-of-the-art packaging features built-in desiccant liners. The desiccants are built right into the bottle wall, and bottle caps provide enhanced protection from environmental damage. Klaire also has a more customary floating desiccant in the bottle as well. Really keeps them dry, keeps them healthy. I really like this. Teamwork makes the dream work. TherBiotic SynBiotic provides powerful support for your microbiome. It's shelf-stable for 2 years. It's a modern formula for the modern world. Check it out. Appreciate your time today. Hope this helped. Hope you found it helpful. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can get notified when the next review comes out. Thanks.